Hello friends, this is Christian Wiese. Today I wanted to discuss what is a conscious moment. Actually, the question came up in a discussion group where somebody asked two questions. Number one, how do I know if I'm awakening? And number two, everybody talks about the here and now, but how do I know if I am in the here and now? Both great questions, and actually I've been stewing over this for a little bit, asked a few other people as well, and it might be that different folks have different definition, but here's what I came up with. Before answering, let me just tell you a little story that happened to me recently. It might actually be quite useful for the discussion. So I had to go to Boston. Normally I take the subway because parking is really hard. But on that day it was cold, I was a little late and also didn't feel so well. So I said, well, let me just take the car. If worse comes to worse, I have to go into one of those overpriced parking garages. But then when I arrived, I suddenly heard that song on the radio that in the olden days always was quite meaningful to me. It kind of communicated in the olden days that I was part of the flow and everything was fine and perfect and so forth. So I kind of smiled, and then as I turned the corner, guess what? Exactly at the spot where I was supposed to meet my wife, a parking spot opened up. It's literally a mathematical impossibility, but it happened. And not only that, also there was suddenly a red light, so I had even time to double park. It was just perfect. And yeah, I thought to myself, well, that's a conscious moment right here, even though it's kind of hard to define. So when it comes to awakening, my response would be anyone who makes it through this video is awakening, because otherwise you simply would have other things to do with your life. I want to start questioning. A higher dimension opens up and tells you things, and you just can't help it. You are, I'd say, at that stage pretty much on a autopilot, and very much like a river flows into the ocean. You're part of the journey, and I mean, you can delay it, but it can't be reversed. That is at least my experience of awakening. As far as the conscious moment is concerned, well, let's start with does it really mean to be unconscious? For many of us, that just means, well, we drank too much, we ran after our goals and stepped on other people's toes. We shouldn't have done that. It was just a time of me, myself, and I. We were selfish. Typically, that's how we define an unconscious moment. But I'd say there's also the other side. Sometimes we want to do good. We want to be a light worker, a teacher, and so forth, a healer. And that I think is an ambitious way to discuss, to define consciousness. In a sense, we are not aware that we are telling ourselves a story. So the true conscious moment is when we manage to step outside of our story, never mind whether it's good or bad. We just, in a sense, no longer exist as an identity. We become merged with something bigger. There's stillness in us. That's how I would define the conscious moment in contrast to the unconscious moment. When I Googled conscious, it pretty much says being aware of our environment, being sensitive to what's going on. In one version it even says being awake. I think that's all points in the right spiritual direction. But in a sense, it's almost like we are at that moment a detective. You are the one who listens to your thought. You are the one who realizes I'm not defined by my thoughts. we grasp our feelings. How I should be feeling happy right now. How come that I feel sad, or vice versa? We observe the environment. How come that at the time when I'm supposedly happy, people are so sad? So in a sense, we understand the entire package deal, body, mind, world, and we become aware. We become aware of the storyteller. It might by itself not be that conscious moment that I discussed, where there is stillness and where there's an absence of the storyteller or the experiencer, the observer. But in a sense, it's a first step. It's a first step in the right direction. Whether in the end it's a bridge to the here and now, I honestly don't know. I have observed that I can be unconscious and suddenly grace appears. I have also observed being in that observer role and grace appears. It seems like grace always appears independent of what we do. In a sense, the power of here and now is that every time we have the time to just step back a little and realize, hey, we're just identifying with something. There's something much bigger going on. And that, I think, is beautifully summed up in a quote by Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. I think it's a beautiful quote, and it speaks to that ability to, in a sense, step back. It's not so much that life throws problem at us. Often it's in the problem statement that we suddenly realize, hey, I learned something. Hey, there's freedom at that moment. I perceived a problem before, but I stepped out of myself. I stepped out of that problem statement altogether. That is the conscious moment. So if I had to sum up the conscious moment in one sentence, that's what I would say. It's from the Bible, often quoted. Be still and know that I am God. So stillness, the recognition that we identified with something before and we step out of it, that to me is a conscious moment. And I am enjoying many of those. I hope you do too. And I also hope you found that presentation useful. Until next time, bye.